I guess pretty much everyone here knows the deal, but this is recorded. The contents may or may not be used by us for social media and other marketing purposes. This can include the chat, question asked, and information shared. If you want to maintain if you want to remain anonymous, please use the Q&A function under meeting tools to ask your questions and select post anonymously. If not, let's get started. Paste your questions in the chat.
And Anush, go ahead and kick us off with something if we don't have anything.
Sounds good. Okay. So Ben, my question to you is, so I'm, of course, you know about Elam Global and Dagger. My data analytics software is not really, limited to one industry. Now,
yes,
so something that I'm struggling with right now is I can try and really kind of hone down on in one sector, that being the banking and financial sector. Which, I'm starting to get some conversations around there. So there's definitely something that I can build out there and really, figure out kind of, become really good in that one sector. But then there's also opportunities that I'm, kind of sourcing in other industries, things like that. And those are also active conversations. But do you think it's too risky for me to try and, manage different things, or should I really kind of focus on one industry, really get good at that, and then venture into something else?
Good question. So what I would say is you want your target market to be as specific as possible, but you don't that doesn't necessarily need to be vertical specific. It doesn't necessarily need to be industry specific. You want to find the 10 people that you can absolutely that all look as much alike as possible, not like physically of course, but that are all as similar as possible, that you can you can thrill that audience of 10. But that doesn't have to be necessarily like 10 slice this way. It could be 10 slice this way. There's, and now what you want to be careful of is, well, we're looking for hiring managers in, these 6 industries. That is not specific. Hiring managers is not at all specific. What I'm saying is that you can use another criterion to slice very, very finely rather than just industry. And you could use a very specific company size. You could use a very specific revenue stage. You could use specific number of employees, or you could use combinations of those things. It doesn't have to be just industry. But you do want to lock in on a beachhead market of like these 10 people are the ones we are really trying to thrill.
Okay. Understood. So, regardless of industry, I should more so focus on what's kind of looking at it this way.
Yeah. And there's all kind, and you could even use an LLM to give you ideas on, how could I slice up my market to make it as specific as possible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Ben. We got a question from Leroy next.
Hey, Leroy.
Leroy's asking, what green flags would you look for when determining an investor is legit? If you were a founder, what would you be looking for?
So you do want to make sure that they are allocating capital. There are a lot of I'm not gonna use the term fake investors because I think that's a little harsh. It makes it sound like potentially a scam or something like that. And I think that there are some investors that are not investing. They say they're investors, but they're not actually writing checks. What I would do though, and so you do want to make sure that they're allocating capital. And you can, the way that I would do, let me back. What I always encourage founders to do is to approach investors from a perspective of seeking advisory help first. Ask for advice, get money, right? Ask for money, get advice. And so Uh, so and investors are so much faster to come to the table if you are if you're soliciting them for more than just a checkbook. And I have had founders even as recently as a few days ago say, I don't really value anything that you're doing except the cash. To which I say, that's fine, you can value my input any way you want. I have no desire to work with a founder like you. um, the best thing is for you to build the best possible team around your project. That is how you win, by having the best people, having people that are better than you, that cover competencies that you don't have. And investors are a great place to seek that, because most of them, nearly all of them, unless they inherited all of their money, they have some kind of capability that got them to a place where they can invest. Um, so then after you've done that, though, that and what that helps you with is volume. It gets more investors to the table faster. And then from there, you can say, then you're in more of a position to negotiate and say, hey, I would love to hear about, like a couple of previous deals you've invested in. Tell me what worked and what didn't. And that kind of hides the ball a little bit, in terms of, like, you're just trying to get their perspective on things, but you're also trying to feel out, are these deals real? Um, and and what did you find helpful about the terms? What did you learn in that process of negotiating the capital outlay? And that's a good way of kind of sort of ferreting out the truth in terms of, like, what is this investor actually doing?
Yeah, that's actually, yeah, that's true. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ben. Fabio has a
Mhm.
question up next. He's asking,
Yes.
following up on yesterday's conversation, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on pitching time? Is there a general difference between pitching to an angel versus pitching to an institutional VC?
Yes, there can be. My understanding is that, if a VC outfit invites you in, to pitch, like, for, say, an hour meeting, then they don't mind hearing a longer pitch. Basically, what I would do is I would try to allocate a third of your time to structured pitch and two-thirds of your time to Q&A. Some digital groups will structure it more like 50-50. But if you have the option, I would always try to reduce your structured pitch time. And I think the founder instinct, especially for technical founders, is to increase the amount of structured time. Don't do that. The presentation cannot be won in structured pitch. It can only be won in Q&A. Because you're defraying the investor objections in Q&A. They are giving you their objections and giving you a chance to address them. And so, anyway, VC pitch, if they give you an hour meeting, I would plan to spend 20 minutes of that time on structured pitch. Angel group, if they give you 20 minutes, I would plan to spend 8 of that in, yeah, and Austin's chiming in chat here, I see, as well. But if you get 20 minutes total, then I would plan to spend 8 of those minutes pitching, and 20 and 12 in Q&A. In the founders group, we offered 20 minutes for the total session, and we ask people to keep it to 5. So that's 3/4 of the time in Q&A. And what happens is, many founders, even very experienced ones, will say, yes, I understand the time limits. Yesterday, we had a multi-exit founder, who said, yes, I understand the time limits, and then proceeded to pitch for 14 minutes. And I didn't interrupt him, because we have a long-standing relationship, and also I respect his status as a multi-exit founder. But that was not very well handled. Their pitch should have been a third the length that it was. So even founders, can make these mistakes. But to answer the question the way it was asked, yes, you'll see longer time allotted for venture versus angels versus, like, more of a community pitch approach, like what we take in the founders group. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Ben. Neil has a question for you next. He's
Yes.
asking what kind of questions are most likely to grab your attention? What kind of engagement would investors be looking for in general?
Um, I'll kind of harken back to the ask for money, get advice, ask for advice, get money. But I would say I look for the founder who's helping, and this kind of also goes to the advisory discussion. I look for a founder who's trying to help me find ways to win. So a founder who asked me a question out of the blue on LinkedIn about exit strategy. Hey, we'd love to get your take on our exit strategy. Like, I might take a meeting on that just for grids. Nobody ever asks me about that. Um, and especially if they're trying to involve me in the process, I'm like, that founder's thinking about how to get me my money back, how to get me a return on my money. Because the way the investor wins is is an exit, or less likely some kind of profit sharing in the long run. But the most likely outcome for the investor is they win when you exit. Um, so so founders who are asking me, like, do you offer advisory help? That is, are you interested in advisory opportunities right now? Like, I, I will respond to those messages every time. And most of the folks, hey, I'd love to share what we're doing with you. Do you just have 15 minutes to jump on a call? Yeah, for one person, but it's not one person, it's 1,000. That is the tired, hacky LinkedIn approach, and it does not work. So I would say advisory approach, and then questions about, like, soliciting the investor's input on very specific things, and offering them the opportunity to be involved with the company if they can help you with the things that you need help with.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, I actually have kind of a spin-off question off of what you just spoke about, like
Yes.
exit strategies, and basically
Yeah.
investor exits. I
Yeah.
remember, like, yesterday during the pitches, you asked, about like potential exits, and things like that. How would
Yeah.
you like? What would you kind of expect a founder to answer when you do ask them what are, exit opportunities? Like, would you want them to, just go ahead and say, oh, like, we're going for IPO? Or especially, if they're very early stages as well, because who knows, right? Who knows, like, somebody, or do you just want them to be kind of knowledgeable about the fact that, hey, maybe they're in a space where they could be acquired or they could go IPO?
So just so everybody knows, the current ratios, and this is Carta data as of maybe 6 months ago, I think. But in the modern era, about 15% of successful exits are IPO. The other 85% are acquisition. And the IPOs are the biggest ones. We're all familiar with the big IPOs happening this summer. But most of the exits are acquisition oriented, and you really have to be you kind of have to get lucky to get to IPO. I think that's the way that I'm analyzing this. So I would assume, if you are thinking, hey, we are going to be a category defining, product or service, then sure, talk about the IPO, but also I would talk about acquisition targets, and I would say here, and you can even ask AI. You can ask your favorite LLM, what, like, given what we do, give it as much context as possible, and say, yeah, and you could even, by the way, chief chief acquisition targets are often competitors. So if you say, to help us find our competitors, and then help us frame a potential case for acquisition, and also ask your LLM to push back on why that might not be a good thing, because why that might not be an acquisition fit, because investors are going to say, like, what the eternal argument, I see this all the time at pitches between founders and investors. The founder makes the argument every time, uh, it makes more sense for this company to acquire us. And the investor makes the argument, no, it just makes them more sense for them to turn on you and crush you. And so you need to acknowledge the possibility that a larger competitor will do that, but also be able to make the case for why they might not do that. And especially if you have proof or strong evidence that they have already tried to do what you're doing and failed. And I know there is a founder in the founders group who I saw make that argument successfully several months ago. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to out the founder and investor. There's nothing bad, but like I don't want to put their business in the street. But the founder won the argument. It's not about winning the argument, but the founder was able to carry the day by saying, yes, thank you, Mr. Investor, for that feedback. Thank you, Mrs. Investor, for that feedback. But we know they've already tried. We have evidence that they have already tried to do this, and it didn't work. So they might try again. There's always that possibility. But it makes much more sense given their previous record for them to acquire us. And there's only so much an investor can say at that point, because really they're just being a turd. If they should do this or they should do that, like they're projecting about someone else's future behavior based on like them just trying to win the argument. So you put them in a difficult position to argue against you if you have the evidence, if you got the receipts. But you need to consider both sides, and don't just consider the argument for why they would acquire. You need to think about the other possibilities too.
Right. Thank you so much, Ben. I guess as we wait for a few more kind of questions to come in through the chat. I kind of want to go back to pitches and like pitch time, kind of presentations.
Sure.
You have seen both, technical founders present as well as non-technical founders present. Have you kind of noticed any patterns in like what technical founders tend to kind of, spend a lot of time talking about? I know you answered this a little bit in a previous answer, versus like, what non-technical founders will spend time kind of, talking about, it would be like you're just staring at the same slide for like 3 minutes straight.
Yeah. So my experience, and I say this with all love and respect for technical founders, because sometimes I wish I was one. But my experience is that non-technical founders tend to manage the time, tend to balance the time a little bit better than technical founders do. And there's one key place that technical founders go wrong, and that is the tech itself, the product, the solution. And sometimes the problem statement, but it's the presentation with technical founders is often weighted toward the early end of the pitch. It's problem and then solution, and sometimes you'll just stare at the same slide, and sometimes it'll be 6 slides all devoted to here's what the tech is, and the investor doesn't care. Like the investor wants a 10,000 or even 30,000 foot perspective on what the tech is. And then they want to hear the business case. They want to hear why, because remember, they win typically only if you exit. That's when they get their money back. So they want to hear why you can build a successful business, what your go-to-market approach is, why your team is the right team to do that. And then what your strategy for getting that exit is. And the calendar for all of this stuff, that knowing that you understand the competitive landscape, who else is out there trying to do this, saying we have no competitors. Every founder wants to say we have no competitors, and every investor does not want to hear we have no competitors. Everybody loves saying it. Everybody hates hearing it, because it means that either as a founder saying we have no competitors typically means you're wrong, or there's no market, or there's no market yet. Now, if you're catching it at just the right time, maybe we have no competitors and this is a great market to be stepping into right now, but don't pitch that. What the better thing to do is to say, here are the people who are approximating what we're trying to do, and then here is how we're differentiated from them. Don't say it's a green field, we have no competitors, because the investor's first thought is, you have no market. And they're looking, many investors are looking for a reason not to write the check. Don't give them that excuse. So But to bring it back around, I think non-technical founders on average do a pretty good job of balancing the time. If they overspend on something, it's often talking about go to market or talking about the team. But my experience is that non-technicals are generally a little bit more sales minded and can and there are many skills that non-technicals don't have that technicals do, obviously. But non-techs are usually a little bit better at kind of reading the room and keeping the investors engaged. And that's just one advantage that we do have.
Perfect. Thank you, Ben. Your answer actually opened up another question for me. What are some of your
Go
reasons
for it.
to not write a check?
Oh yeah. I think the biggest one is the grandstanding founder. The founder who's
Mhm.
clearly more in it for like the win on LinkedIn. They're the one who's one big red flag is bragging about how much anyone involved with the team has raised previously. I do not care at any time how much someone raised in a previous round with a previous company. I do not care. Founders love bragging about that sort of thing to each other and to like their audiences. Investors don't care. Investors want to know what the return on that investment was. Yeah, the big raise is like the big raise, and the big raise is not even your win as a founder. The big raise is all right. That's table stakes. Now we got the money. Now we got to deliver on the promise we just made to our investors. The raise gets you to the table. Do not brag about raises. Now you can celebrate a successful raise in the current moment, but like, and then forget that you ever raised that money. That is bragging about raises is a giant red flag. And in general, founder grandstanding is a big red flag, and just sort of knowing that they're in it for the performative aspects of it more than building a business is something we and I hate seeing as investors. The next thing is the fact that we can't get that is a lie. It's a lie time. Get back to the business you're in. Like if
Ben,
you're thinking traction is
Ben,
only yes, yeah.
sorry, I think your connection is a little weak. We're kind of losing you here and there in the middle.
I'll kill my video. Hopefully that'll help.
Yes, yes, yeah.
The other thing that the next thing that investors hate the most is the founder who needs to be saved. And the version of this that often pops out is the founder who says, I can't get traction without investor capital. That's a lie. It's a lie every time. And you're lying to yourself and you're lying to your investors. Even if you are in a vertical that requires extraordinary capex, let's just take space as an example. Space and hardware are typically very robotics are typically very high capex, but you can get traction without investor capital because traction doesn't just mean revenue. Traction means partner relationships. Traction means customer interest. Traction means, it means LOIs. Traction means verbal commits. Traction means following on socials. Traction means all of those things. And really, and my favorite version of this is the founder who says, the market is absolutely slavering. They're falling all over themselves for this product. But we can't get any revenue because we don't have investor capital. To every single one of those founders, I say, go make pre-sales. Put your money where your mouth is. If your market is so in love with this idea, get each one of them to put $100 down on your product. And I say this to founders too, and this is regarding revenue, but the day you take on $1 of revenue, one hard-earned American dollar that does not come from friends or family, your valuation doubles or triples overnight. Now, but the founder that needs to be saved, that's a red flag. I want the opposite of that. I saw Adam Reinhart joined our call. Adam is the opposite of that in the best possible way. Adam refuses to be stopped. Adam and Adam, I'm so proud of the work that you do in terms of like just going out and making it happen and not letting not letting, investor delays or any of that stuff stand in your way. Going out and getting the revenue, getting the new deals, getting the distribution, getting the partnerships. Like, if you guys want to know how to do this right, talk to Adam Reinhart. That guy is a shining example of the founder who is completely inevitable, and I'm so glad to be on his team. Um, so, so that we look for founders who make it happen. With do not ever do towards with an investor. Do not ever say this is happening with or without you, but demonstrate it in your actions. So going back to other red flags, the founder who doesn't have any sense, who spends all of their time talking about the tech, that's a red flag too, because it means they don't really understand that they're pitching a business, not a technology. And then the founder who is combative with investors during Q&A, the first two words out of your mouth after every question in Q&A should be, thank you. Thank you for that question. Even if you think it's a stupid question, the investor's time is very valuable in almost every case, and they are trying to help. 99% of the time, they are legitimately trying to be helpful. So so say thank you, and then address the feedback and address the question, and try to help them understand how you're going to overcome the objection. But investors legitimately do want to help, so treat them as an ally and a mentor, not an adversary. Now, every now and then those discussions will turn adversarial, and your job as a founder is to keep it allied and to keep it aligned with the investor as much as possible. They want to be on your team. In the long run, investors are in the room because they want to make investments, and they want you to go win, but they just don't want to write a check that is not going to win. So help them understand how your company is a win and how you as a founder are a win.
Thank you so much, Ben. That's some great
Mm-hmm.
advice for kind of all of us in the room. Yeah. Okay, I guess people are still being a little shy about asking questions, so I'll go ahead with another one.
Yeah, please do.
What are some of the worst cases of founder math that you have seen? And founder math, it could be something like putting 100 trillion as a TAM in their pitch deck to
Yeah.
when you're getting a closer look at their books, and you just see just numbers kind of all over the place.
Sure. Yeah, the classic one is the TAM that's larger than the global economy. That one is, yeah, that is, and I had a founder yesterday who actually, I really believe in this founder's product. It's a potentially a new asset class for funding startups. And I'm a big believer in this guy, but he said yesterday, we think our TAM is several times the size of the current entire startup ecosystem. And I had to kind of smile to myself because there's a good chance that I'm going to invest with this guy. But maybe their market is the solar systems. Good one. And so I believe in this founder, and I think as long as you're not being combative about that part of it either, and the investor can kind of bring you back to earth a little bit and help you understand that your TAM probably isn't several times the size of the entire startup ecosystem. So that is one. That's the classic example. I think you know what really throws us as investors is if we feel like there is some sense that the founder is not being ethical. We saw a pitch, unfortunately, last week in the founders group where there's some serious concerns about the ethics of what's involved. And I can't get into the details, but um, anything that is like kind of a financial instrument like fintech and especially crypto, that you just have to understand there's going to be a very high standard in terms of making sure that the investors understand that it is not a scam and there's not even a whiff of a scam. Because fintech and especially crypto and blockchain are kind of places where that shows up because Crypto in particular is just not very regulated, and it's a very easy place to scam people. So I would, and that's not quite so much about founder math, but it is it is a big red flag for investors that kind of relates to founder math. And with the founder math, you just have to make sure that everything's defensible. Like you can make really big you can make really big claims, but I would do it in a way that is humble. And one of the reasons that I didn't, kind of like immediately jump into this conversation with the founder yesterday, who I feel like has kind of an unreasonable TAM, is because his approach to the conversation was very humble. It clearly was not intended to like knock me out of my seat and like, you have to write a check right now. Like that is, I think, taking a tone of humility. It's very difficult to strike the balance between the proper amount of humility and the right amount of confidence too. I'm going to try turning my video back on. Just Anush, just wave at me if I need to kill my video. But you do want to be confident as a founder, but you also want to be humble, and that's not an easy balance to strike. I found that the founders that do strike that balance well, we are more likely to invest in. Founder math, it's kind of a case by case basis, but you can remember AI is your ally. You can drop everything into AI and say, "Hey, just BS check me on this. Don't be a don't be what's the word? A sycophant. Don't be a sycophant here. Tell me where I'm going to get questions about this." And AI will be pretty helpful to you. AI is very good with that kind of 0 to 1 evaluation stuff, kind of telling you how you stack up against other base cases in your vertical and in startups in general.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, I guess the next question is on me again. Oh, actually, Neil coming in for rescue. First-time founders, especially technical ones, struggle when they come in to pitch for the first time. They get stage fright. What's the best place for them to practice outside of TFG office hours? Nice, Neil. Good job.
So outside of this office hours, there are several other office hours options that are not the live community pitch. So just to be clear about the distinction between those two things, we have community pitches on right now. They're all on Wednesdays. Wednesday mornings U.S. time, to make sure that we can get our friends who are in Africa and Asia and Europe in the afternoon and evening for them. So we do it in the morning on Wednesday mornings. Those are our what I would call our live pitch meetings. There are office hours though scattered throughout the week at the Founders Group, kind of I think around these same times, kind of morning U.S. time and afternoon, evening elsewhere, where you can absolutely practice your pitch. And it's not, there may be an investor in the room, but it's not our full deck of investors. And there are mentors like Anush and Adam Meek and Adam Reinhart. And Neil, you may be doing office hours now as well. But that is a great place for founders to go get reps and get feedback. And we offer feedback after the live pitches, but you're not going to get another shot the following week. So I think getting in and doing 2 or 3 runs prior to coming into one of our live pitches on other office hours is a great way to go. And then practice with your founder friends. Tear each other's pitches apart, tear each other's decks apart. We're here as a resource at the Founders Group to be helpful with that. And if you don't have a founder friend who can help you with that yet, please, by all means, reach out to us. Reach out to anybody with a leader badge. You can tag @leader. I need help with this, and somebody will help you. And if somebody doesn't help you, shoot me a personal message and say, "Hey, I did this, this, and that, and nobody's reached out to me yet. What do I do?" I will help you. But you got to do the other stuff first. You can't just come straight to me.
Absolutely. Fridays office hours around this time, we do deck reviews and kind of just pitch practices. There's usually a couple of us in the room. I'm usually there. Adam Meek is there. So yeah, please, if you want to practice, please come by, especially if you're pitching the following Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay. Um, I guess Ben, one oh, actually, Neil has another question.
Yes.
Do you have some best practices for presenting financials?
Yes, keep it minimal on this structured presentation. Very minimal. You can have ancillary slides. Ancillary slides, the rule is you can have as many as you want, no limit, as many as you want, as long as you can find them quickly. But on structured presentation, if you're pitching to an angel group and you've got, 20 minutes total, say, 6 to 8 minutes of structured presentation and another 12 to 14 minutes of Q&A, I would do one slide on financials. You can have ancillary slides where you get into more detail. But it's just, most of the investors um, don't care on the first meeting about the financial details. They care about the high level, just knowing that you understand, and especially if the financials of the company are particularly relevant to the business case, like, putting it on your timing, like this is kind of what we feel like our our growth rate's going to look like. Most investors are concerned with revenue and revenue growth. Those are the two most important metrics in startups. EBITDA is not. Some founders, especially coming in from mainstream businesses or private equity, are really focused on EBITDA, and EBITDA is just not that important in startups. Revenue and revenue growth are what matters, and investors and founders alike take an approach of we are going to grow this big now, and we will make it profitable later. That is the anthem, so to speak. But then, and I would just be careful. I would be very careful about overwhelming investors with too much financial detail, especially on structured presentation. Now, if somebody asks you a question, and usually it'll be a finance person, that will ask you a finance question during Q&A, because investors usually ask questions out of their own expertise. And because they don't want you to give an answer that they don't understand, and then they look stupid in front of their investor friends. But they'll ask you questions out of their own expertise. So, but yeah, in the ancillary slides, you can get as detailed as you want, and just understand that for each question in Q&A, I would limit yourself to 30 to 45 seconds. 1 minute, maybe, absolute max 90 seconds. Now on a deep dive, that's different. But on an original first meeting structured presentation, and then you're into Q&A, keep your answers to 45 seconds. So no matter how much detail you've got on the slides, I would keep the answer short. It just gives you a chance to answer more questions and frame more.
Ben, we're starting to lose you a little bit again.
Sorry, on my video. All right. So yeah, so as much detail as you want on the ancillary slides. Keep your answers short and punchy. 30 to 45 seconds, a minute max. 90 seconds at absolute maximum in Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ben. We got about 3.5 minutes. If anybody else has any questions, or I can shoot a quick one off to you, Ben.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So during pitches, or even like, let's say, maybe, further on meetings, what is one question, or maybe some questions that you see founders are not being able to answer properly? I guess let's say, especially during pitches. Yeah. During pitches. Yeah.
So during pitch Q&A, what are the
Yeah.
questions that stump founders the most often?
Yeah.
I would say that's a good question. I would say typically it's questions about use of funds. Why do sometimes an investor will challenge the use of funds. That they'll say, why do you want to spend so much money on go to market, or tell us about the founder salaries or something like that. And I think that's the reason it's difficult for the founder to address those objections, is because there's not a hard and fast rule for how the money should be spent, right? It's the founder's choice. And if the investor takes issue with that, it's difficult for the founder to like sort of prove that they're right, because there is no way of proving it. Like the, and there's all kinds of approaches to allocating investor dollars that all can work, and all can potentially go wrong as well. So if the investor says, "No, I think you're spending too much money on on marketing," or "I think you're giving," the things that I would be the rules of thumb that I would adopt going into that are spending more than, I would say, a third of the total spends on founder salaries at seed stage would be a red flag. Even probably at Series A, probably still a red flag, and it depends on the size of the raise. The investors want to know that you're not starving, but they don't want you to be totally comfortable either in terms of founder salaries. The other red flag for me is if you're spending more than half of the money on marketing, especially advertising, and especially this is true if you're pre-revenue. My response to that as an investor is you just don't have product market fit yet. You might get product market fit, but you don't have it yet. And for you to say, well, we're just gonna, this product sells itself, we're just going to go dump a bunch of money into advertising and voila, unicorn. My response is you don't know what you're talking about. That is not how this works. And even post revenue, just saying, hey, we dump a bunch of advertising money to this and it'll automatically scale, that's still dangerous. So other places I see founders having trouble is competitive landscape, kind of going back to the why wouldn't so and so just turn on you and crush you. Those are, that can get a little combative because the founder always wants to respond, no, they should just acquire us. And the investor is always saying, no, they should just crush you. And who's right? Well, it's impossible to know. But as a founder, if you've thought about that and you understand the case for why someone could disrupt you, then the investors will respect you more.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ben, for joining and providing us with your wonderful advice.